All right, let's dive into methodological literature reviews. I know you want to know how to write one that really makes an impact, so that's what we are looking at today. But we're going to be taking a look at this really interesting study that was published in Organizational Research Methods. It's a meta-review of 168 methodological reviews, and these were pulled from some top journals like Academy of Management Journal, Journal of Applied Psychology, and Strategic Management Journal.
So this study by Guinness Ramani and Al Abdul-Jabbar, what's really cool about it is that it gives us this behind-the-scenes look at what makes these reviews so successful. It goes beyond just looking at the content of the reviews. They actually delved into how these reviews were structured, the type of language that was used, even the choices that the authors made along the way.
So it's like they cracked the code of what makes a methodological review really stand out.
Exactly. And one of the first things that they discovered is that the vast majority of these reviews actually fall into three main categories: critical, narrative, and descriptive.
Okay, so I'm imagining critical reviews. Those are the ones that kind of take a hard look at the existing methods, point out any flaws, and maybe even suggest some improvements.
You got it. They're all about evaluating strengths and weaknesses, identifying any areas where a method might be falling short, and then coming up with some potential solutions.
Okay, that makes sense. And then a descriptive review, is that one that kind of gives like a comprehensive overview of a particular method?
It's more like a snapshot, I would say, of the current state of the art. It summarizes the existing research on a method. It outlines the key concepts, maybe the techniques involved and the various applications, but it doesn't necessarily make super strong judgments or draw up broad conclusions.
So it's like setting the stage for future research, kind of laying that groundwork.
Precisely. Now, narrative reviews are a little bit different. They're more flexible, a bit more exploratory, and they often weave together different perspectives, maybe different theories, to try and provide a richer understanding of a methodological issue.
So if I'm trying to choose the right type of review for my research, are there any guidelines maybe based on the goal I'm trying to achieve?
Absolutely. And that's where this study gets really interesting, because it's not enough to just understand what these different types of reviews are, right? We also need to know which one is the right tool for the job.
Yeah, that makes sense. So give me the inside scoop. What do I need to know?
All right, so if you're aiming to evaluate the effectiveness of a particular method, or maybe you're comparing different methods, a critical review is going to be your best bet.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to introduce a new method to a wider audience, or maybe provide a comprehensive overview, like a complex topic, then a descriptive or a narrative review might be more suitable.
Okay, so it really depends on your research goals and the audience you're trying to reach.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. The study found that there are two other types of reviews: meta-analytic and umbrella reviews, that are incredibly powerful, but they're often overlooked.
Wait, meta-analytic reviews? Those are the ones that use statistics to kind of combine the findings of multiple studies, right? And didn't you mention they could be helpful in tackling things like questionable research practices?
You're picking up on it really quickly. It's not just about combining the findings, though. It's about uncovering patterns and insights that might be hidden when you're just looking at individual studies. And yes, they are very valuable for addressing things like publication bias, where studies with positive findings are more likely to be published than those with negative or null findings.
So it's like getting a more complete picture of the research landscape, right?
Exactly. By synthesizing data from multiple studies, meta-analytic reviews give us a much more accurate and reliable understanding of a phenomenon.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But what about these umbrella reviews? What are those all about? What makes those different?
Think of them as reviews of reviews. So they take a bunch of existing reviews, usually on a very specific topic, often a very narrow methodological topic, and they synthesize the findings to answer a very specific research question. It's like having a team of experts distilling the most important information for you.
Oh, okay. So they're the ultimate time saver for researchers who need to get up to speed on a topic quickly.
Exactly. And because they're drawing on a wider range of sources, they can provide more comprehensive and nuanced insights than a single review could.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like we're not just reviewing studies anymore, we're reviewing entire approaches to research. But I'm curious, what about the nitty-gritty of actually writing a methodological review? What makes a review stand out and get noticed?
Well, that's where those 10 key factors identified by Guinness, Ramani, and Al Abdul-Jabbar come in. Think of them as the building blocks of a successful methodological review, and we'll get into those in just a bit.
Perfect. I can't wait.
Yeah, so these 10 factors are like a checklist almost for writing a review that not only gets published, but also really makes an impact. And one of the most crucial factors, and I think this one often gets overlooked, is the need for review.
Okay, so it's not enough to just be passionate about a certain method or you think it's cool. You need to convince editors that your review is actually necessary.
Exactly. You need to demonstrate that there's a genuine need for your review. Like there's a gap in the current knowledge that your review is going to fill.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some confusion surrounding the method or inconsistencies in how it's being applied, or even a lack of awareness about its potential.
So you need to make a strong case for why your review matters, not just to you, but to the wider research community. What else did they find?
Another really fascinating factor is the criticality of the issue. It's not just enough to describe a method. You need to really explain why getting this method right matters.
Right, like what are the potential consequences of using this method incorrectly? What are the implications for research design, data analysis, even the interpretation of findings?
Exactly. You need to highlight the stakes, so to speak. And this is where your expertise really shines through, right? You're not just reporting on a method, you're providing insights into its nuances, its strengths, and its limitations.
That makes a lot of sense. But even if you have a critical topic and a well-structured argument, there's still the challenge of making your review readable and engaging, right?
Well, absolutely. Remember, we're trying to reach a wider audience, not just the methodological experts. Clarity and readability are essential. Aginis, Romani, and Al Abdul-Jabir found that reviews that used clear, concise language and avoided overly technical jargon were much more likely to be successful.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, write for your audience, not for yourself.
Exactly. And that applies not only to the language you use, but also to the structure and layout of your review.
I'm really intrigued by this idea of structure. How do you organize all this information in a way that makes sense and is easy to follow?
One effective strategy, and this was highlighted in the study, is to kind of mirror the research process itself. Think about how researchers approach a study. They typically move through these distinct stages, right? Defining the research question, designing the study, collecting the data, analyzing it, and finally interpreting and reporting those findings.
Right, so if you were reviewing a statistical method, for instance, you might have separate sections for recommendations on how to choose appropriate variables, how to handle missing data, how to interpret the results, and so on.
You got it. It's all about breaking down a complex topic into these manageable chunks and guiding the reader through each step of the process. And don't be afraid to get creative with your layout, use tables, figures, even flowcharts to illustrate key points. Make your recommendations more memorable.
This is great stuff. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together to create a truly impactful methodological review. But I have to ask, what about software? So many research methods these days rely heavily on specialized software packages.
You're absolutely right. And then this is another area where methodological reviews can really shine. By providing software guidelines and even code examples, you can make your recommendations so much more actionable for researchers.
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. Imagine how much easier it would be for researchers to apply new methods if they had those kinds of practical resources at their fingertips.
Exactly. Unfortunately, the study found that software guidelines are often overlooked in methodological reviews. Only about 20% of the reviews they analyzed actually discussed software packages, and even fewer provided any actual code examples.
Wow, that's a missed opportunity.
It is. So if you're writing a review that involves software, consider this your call to action. Don't just tell researchers what to do, show them how to do it. Provide them with the tools and resources they need to put your recommendations into practice.
I love that. So we've covered the need for a review, the criticality of the issue, readability, structure, layout, and even software guidelines. Are there any other major pitfalls that we should be aware of?
One of the biggest takeaways from this study is the importance of transparency. It's not enough to just make choices in your review. You need to be upfront about those choices and explain your reasoning.
Okay, transparency it is, but I have to admit that word gets thrown around a lot. Can you break it down for me? What does transparency actually look like in the context of a methodological review?
Think of it as showing your work every step of the way. How did you select the studies that you included in your review? What were your criteria for excluding certain studies? How did you code the data? Did you involve multiple coders to ensure reliability? All of these decisions need to be clearly laid out.
So if you were conducting a review on, say, methods for analyzing qualitative data, you might need to explain why you chose to focus on a specific type of qualitative data or a particular analytical approach.
Precisely. And you would want to explain your reasoning for any exclusions, like Did you exclude certain types of data because they were outside the scope of your review, or were there specific reasons why you focused on one analytical approach over another?
That makes a lot of sense.
Remember, it's about being open about the limitations of your review and the decisions that shaped its boundaries. And this not only strengthens the credibility of your review, but it also helps other researchers build upon your work.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from understanding the different types of methodological reviews to crafting clear, actionable recommendations. Any final words of wisdom before we wrap things up?
So we talked about choosing the right type of review, making sure our work is readable, and being transparent about our process. For someone who's actually ready to, sit down and write a methodological review, what's the big takeaway here? What really stood out to me from Agenis Ramani and Al Bildater's work is that methodological rigor, it's not just about blindly following some set of rules. It's really about making sure that our research is credible, trustworthy, and that it ultimately contributes to a better understanding of how we do research.
It's like we're not just writing for ourselves, we're writing for the entire research community.
Exactly. And that sense of responsibility should guide every decision we make, from choosing our topic to how we structure our recommendations.
So what about the future of methodological reviews? Any predictions?
I think we're going to see a real surge in meta-analytic and umbrella reviews because they're uniquely suited to tackling some of the biggest challenges facing research today. Things like questionable research practices, the need to synthesize vast amounts of data.
So instead of getting bogged down in these individual studies, we can kind of zoom out and see the bigger picture.
Precisely. And that's incredibly exciting, right? We can start to identify trends and patterns and best practices that might have been totally invisible at the level of individual studies.
It's like we're moving from a microscopic view of research to a macroscopic one.
Exactly. And that shifting perspective, I think, has the potential to revolutionize how we think about, conduct, and evaluate research.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the power and potential of methodological literature reviews.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you. And remember, writing a methodological review, it's challenging, but it's incredibly rewarding.
Oh, so to all you aspiring reviewers out there, go forth and review with rigor, with clarity, and of course with transparency. Until next time, happy researching.